Crabbe's Journal 6. I drove off the main highway about an hour before dawn and turned down the secondary highway, traveling at 30 miles, until I reached a small town whose name I've forgotten. Noelville or something like that. The main street of the town hit the highway at right angles, and I turned right, quickly leaving behind a row of wood frame stores, a bank, a hotel, and a straggle of wooden bungalows. In the near dawn of the buildings, it looked tired and defeated. About 20 miles outside of town, well into the bush, signs advertising Ithaca Camp began to appear. The road was narrower, and the blacktop had turned to gravel a long time ago. I had to watch carefully for the logging road I wanted, but managed to find it and turned the station wagon onto it just as the sky was beginning to brighten. I had met no other cars since I had left the main highway. The logging road hadn't been used since the previous autumn by the look of the heavy layer of leaves, a good sign. I had to drive slowly. Branches that canopied the track whacked the side of the wagon and thumped hollowly against the canoe. I drove for about 10 minutes until I spotted a good hiding place for the car. A big stand of evergreens packed fairly close together, but allowing room to ram the wagon into the middle of them. I could barely get the door open. Stretching my creaky limbs, I hadn't dared to stop, except to take a leak, so I'd driven all night. I looked around and caught sign of the river through the branches. It was a dull gray color in the flat lighting. The forest was quiet, only light birdsong could be heard, the air was chilly. Always listening for motors and voices, I spent a few hours doing hard work. First, I unloaded the packs and dragged them down to the river bank, covering them with leaves just in case a fishing boat happened along. Then I hauled the canoe down to the roof, from the roof of the wagon, banging it and my head against the branches above the station wagon, and dragged it near the packs, where I covered it with branches and leaves. Lastly, I cut boughs to hide the car even better than it was already. Satisfied that the family auto would escape notice of anyone who wasn't looking for it, I sat down in a sunny patch near the river but out of sight, leaned back against a tree, and munched on a chocolate bar. I'll tell you, some chocolate bars taste better than others. That was the best I've ever had. The afternoon sun was warm and I was tired. A fresh breeze fooled around the branches, rustling the dead leaves that clung to the trees since the previous autumn. The big river looked flat, lazy, and slow, murmuring gently as it slipped by. I fell asleep. I awoke once in the dark, a little chilly, and dug my sleeping bag out of the pack. In a wink, I was bundled up and back asleep. The next I opened my eyes was about an hour before dawn, the time I always got up at home. I have to. I can never get to sleep again, but this morning something was missing, the churning in my stomach that told me my nerves were getting ready for another day. After taking a drink from the river, I set quickly to work. The sky was clear and starry, with plenty of light. Lifting the canoe to the water and launching it was lesson number 1. On the first try, I half dragged, half lifted it to the water, but not too well because it went cockeyed and took a couple of gallons of water. So I dragged it out again, rolled it over to jump it out, and tried again a few yards downriver where the bank sloped more gently into the water. Fine. I went back for the gear and turned around just in time to see the canoe floating gently downstream. It cost me 2 legs wet to the crotch to retrieve it. That was when I thought it would be a good idea to attach a rope to the bow. That done, I tied the boat to a log on the bank and went back for the packs. Manhandling a huge pack filled with mostly tinned food into a canoe that bobs and tips with every move you make is no easy task, especially when you have to do it twice, and a third time for the equipment pack. It was no consolation that I'd be eating my way through the food, but I did get it. I did it. I got it all in, stowed the extra paddle, then looked anxiously for a place to sit. I'd only been in a canoe with another person, you know who. Did I sit in the teeny person seat at one end that was situated almost at the point, or in the slightly wider one at the other end, which at least had some legroom? I tried the first. I had no legroom because of the packs, and when I sat down on the other end, the boat shot out of the water and remained suspended in mid-air, and my ass was 1 inch from the water. This can't be it, I thought. I got out and stared at the arrangement for a minute. Then a thought struck me. I regrettably redragged 3 heavy packs which I had stowed wherever they fit, and placed 2 of them resting on the long edges side by side against the narrower of the 2 seats. I threw the haversack that held my clothes into a little space in front of the seat, almost bouncing it into the river. Then I took the 3rd pack and put it in the center of the boat just behind the thwart. Carefully, I got in again and gingerly sat down. The craft seemed to sit flat in the water. I was very pleased with myself, until I remembered I had brought no life jacket. Oh well, too late now. Time was passing. I wanted to be past Ithaca Camp when I was out onto the lake by light, so I pushed off into the current. I didn't know nearly enough funny words to describe the way my brave craft and I traveled down the river. I'd had to paddle upstream rather than down. I'd still be there, cursing and weaving and turning complete circles in the middle of the river, bumping the banks. I realized in about 5 seconds that paddling a canoe by yourself, in the dark too, was a lot harder than sitting in front, putting a blade into the water every once in a while as the person in the back does all the work. I guess I imagined the thing steered itself. As soon as I accomplished one stroke, the current took the canoe over, and I was more or less part of the baggage. Near the lake as it was, the river was wide, flat, and slow, and I could almost guide the boat along. I went backwards part of the time, turned a couple of 360s, and nudged a few logs and rocks, but I made it, safe and a bit scared, to the river mouth. It was daybreak by then. There was a gray-white smear on the horizon that showed a sky beginning to cloud over. At the river mouth, I ran into a sandbar just beneath the surface and had to step out onto the ice-cold water and drag the canoe over the bar and into the lake. Luckily, there was just a faint breeze. My humorous and inefficient paddling made it slow going. I'd get in a couple of strokes to the right, sending me in a forward arc to the left to shore. Changing sides and repeating each motion pushed me to the right. Thus, I zigged and zagged towards a large stand of white trees on the farther shore that I remember marked the way out of the lake. I was anxious to get across the water, which was about 2 miles wide. I paddled hard. I paddled hard and was soon tired. After I'd worked for an hour and was halfway across, I turned to look back at the camp. With relief, I saw that I was certainly too far away to be describable. After what seemed like ages, I made the far shore, letting the canoe scrape softly onto a beach. All my muscles were sore and complaining, especially arms and shoulders, and I was breathing hard. Blisters had begun to form across my palms and in the hollows of my thumbs. All this for only 2 miles. Still, I felt a sense of accomplishment. Out of sight of the camp, I was officially free. Strange how that word soon took on a new and unexpected meaning.